1960s. The race turned into chaos.
The other BRM, that of Jackie Stewart, upside down with Jackie still in it.
Jackie Stewart found himself locked upside down in a farmer's outbuilding. And then it got even worse.
I was soaked in fuel, high-octane aviation fuel in those days. It was burning my skin right off me.
But that was only the beginning. Spa, 1966. Jackie Stewart came into 1966 with his reputation soaring. From the quiet hills of Scotland to the best rookie in Formula One. So Spa-Francorchamps, the second race of the year, was their first real test at full speed. It was one of the most dangerous circuits in the world, and Jackie knew exactly what it would demand. The race started well. Then, without warning, everything changed. Torrential rain out of nowhere. One section of the track was drenched while the rest stayed dry. It was chaos. Cars began to go off immediately. Right ahead, Bonnier's Cooper was stranded and hanging on the edge. But the worst was yet to come. Bondurant, Hill, Brabham, all sliding through the flood. Brabham somehow held on. Jackie didn't. At nearly 160 miles per hour, his car hit the standing water and snapped out of his hands. There was nothing he could do.
The drivers encountered a fierce rainstorm at the 145 mile an hour corner at the bottom of the hill, and that was where Graham Hill saw in the field the other BRM, that of Jackie Stewart, upside down with Jackie still in it.
Once again, his BRM hit the standing water at nearly 160 miles per hour, spun off to the right, and slammed sideways into a telegraph pole. The car ricocheted into a ditch, then crashed through a wooden hut, finally coming to rest upside down in a farmer's outbuilding. The wreck locked him in place. His leg jammed beneath the steering wheel. That's where it got worse. Fuel started leaking in the cockpit.
And I was soaked in fuel. High-octane aviation fuel in those days. It was burning my skin right off me.
Making him a ticking time bomb. He screamed for help, but there was no one around him.
I had no idea what had happened to Jackie, but another two wives. One sort of drowned about half a bottle of whiskey. One went hysterical because they had no idea what happened.
Graham Hill, Bob Bondurant, and a local farmer reached the wreck and began working to free him. Using a toolkit handed over by a spectator, they carefully avoided sparks as they loosened the wheel and pulled him out. 25 minutes passed before anyone found him. Where were the marshals? Nowhere to be found. Stewart was laid in the back of a pickup truck to wait for an ambulance. The first aid center was a dirty wooden shed with cigarette butts and rubbish. Finally, he got to a hospital in Liège. Then he went home to the UK in a private jet. The crash changed Jackie forever. He realized Formula One couldn't stay the same. From then on, it wasn't just about trophies. It was about survival. No driver should ever go through what he had endured. His first step, a personal doctor at every race. And soon, he was pushing for Formula One itself to have a medical team following the drivers everywhere on the calendar. And just imagine how insane that sounds today, that the F1 didn't have any medics on every track they traveled to. But thanks to Jackie's efforts, that was implemented in 1967. But at the time, he was hated by both fans and drivers.
Who is this wimp Jackie Stewart who's going around saying motor racing ought to be safer? If you don't like the heat, get out of the kitchen.
Despite the hate, Jackie was really coming into his own, both as a talent on the track and a star of it. But this was still Jim Clark's F1. His fellow Scotsman was the class of F1. One of the most dominant champions anyone has ever seen, and a personal mentor, friend, and hero to Jackie Stewart.
Jim Clark was the best driver of my era, in my view. Smooth, clean.
As he was coming into his own, he was looking forward to the legendary battles that he would have with his hero. But in 1968, midweek, he would get the news.
Clark had careered off the track at over 150 miles an hour. Clark had been killed instantly as his car smashed through the trees bordering the track.
Jim Clark had crashed and passed away in an F2 race. Jackie was absolutely heartbroken.
We haven't seen another Jim Clark, but he was a very special man.
The loss of his hero hit him harder than he could have imagined. Jim Clark was the most smooth, calculated, and controlled driver. He wasn't reckless, but he died all the same.
When Jim Clark died, and I'll never forget it, you know, you go from there to straight into another race.
Yeah.
And you just get used to death.
That made one thing absolutely clear to him in his mind.
All of us thought, my God, if Jim Clark gets killed, we could all be killed.
And that's where Jackie Stewart really started to push F1 to introduce safety measures. Jackie advocated for three main things: mandatory seatbelts, full face helmets, which were still optional at the time, and mainly track redesigns. The cars weren't just fast, but they were also entire death traps. Just that year alone, 4 drivers lost their lives. Jackie knew he had made the most of his prime, because you never know what could happen. So in 1969, Stewart joined Matra International under Ken Tyrrell.
They never actually signed a contract between the two of them. They shook hands on it, and that became their contract.
Due to his brilliant designs, Jackie Stewart had finally arrived. He won 5 of the first 6 races, leading the championship by mid-season. Next, he would return to the same circuit where he had nearly lost his life, Spa. 3 years later, what do you think changed? Nothing. Despite all of his campaigning, the organizers still refused to act, valuing money over the safety of the drivers. As a leading voice in the Grand Prix Drivers Association, Jackie wasn't willing to let it slide. He rallied the grid, and together they boycotted the event, forcing the Belgian Grand Prix to be cancelled. Spa would only return to the calendar once every safety demand had been met. Jackie went on to dominate the 1969 season, winning at Monza and the championship, almost double Jackie X in second place. No one could call him a coward now. He was at the top of the food chain. More than that, by 1969, Jackie Stewart wasn't just a world champion, but he was a global phenomenon. British icon, he was the face of motor racing, rubbing shoulders, attending events with the likes of Muhammad Ali, the Beatles, and Rolling Stones. Jackie Stewart was the second highest paid athlete in all of Europe. For a sport as big and popular as Formula One, it was shocking how little they seemed to care about safety. This wasn't some backstreet hobby. It was one of the biggest championships in the world. In the last 2 seasons alone, 5 drivers had been killed in accidents everyone knew could have been avoided. He knew, being the face of motorsport, it was his job to continue the crusade. Jackie organized another boycott, this time at the Nürburgring. The Green Hell had abysmal safety features. Even then, the track authorities refused to accept the demands. This time, he wasn't alone. He was joined by Jochen Rind, the man leading the championship. The image of the title rivals coming together was powerful. But this wasn't just any other driver. Jochen became the strongest rival that Jackie Stewart had ever faced. But instead of a bitter rivalry, the two became incredible friends.
Jochen is a very, very talented driver who I enjoy racing with very much. We're next door neighbours. We're 300 yards apart.
Jackie Stewart was a racer to his core, but even he knew this season belonged to Jochen.
I know that there's nothing that I can do about it. I do want it again, but I know that I can't do it in 1970 because, the Lotus is just too good.
By the time they arrived at Monza, the title race was all but over. Stunned silence all around. His wife Nina was there waiting in the crowd. Jackie went over to comfort her, and when he tried to take the kid to the ambulance, that's where he got the news. But inexplicably, not only in a move that would be never understood to this day, the FIA forced the drivers to get back in the car and continue the race like nothing had ever happened. So much of the paddock has lost the main man, and no one felt it harder than Jackie Stewart.
He was a truly great driver.
But in a surprising turn of events, he recorded the fastest time he ever did at Monza after getting back in the car. And at the funeral, you could see in everyone's faces.
And of the Holy Ghost, dear friends, dear family,
This wasn't just another casualty. This was the world champion, and the only one in history who never got to raise his trophy. His name would always be a dark legacy in the sport. Jackie once again had to find the strength to get back in the car and race like nothing had happened. Next year, Jackie was all alone at the top.
Where death was something that took place on a regular basis. I mean, the number of funerals that I went.
He would go on to dominate the 1971 season as well, winning his second world championship with 3 races remaining. He was champion, but the last few years had taken so much from him emotionally. But in Crystal Place, 1969, he found something else: hope. The reigning world champion wasn't at a Grand Prix, but was racing in Formula 2. And to his surprise, he couldn't overtake the car in front of him. A much less competitive car driven by a man named François Cevert. So impressed by his talent, he recommended him to the team boss, Ken Tyrrell. So when the opportunity presented itself, Jackie lobbied to get Cevert to be his new teammate. Jackie Stewart didn't just see a promising young driver, he saw the next him. The talent was obvious, but so was the recklessness. Cevert would later admit,
Jackie did all my education, Jackie Stewart. When I arrived in the team, I was a mad driver. I was driving like hell. I was not thinking enough to what I was doing, and Jackie stopped all that and teach me.
They became inseparable, living and traveling together, sharing more than just a garage. Francois wasn't just a teammate. In Jackie's words, he
was part of the Stewart family.
Over time, Jackie's role shifted from mentor to architect, molding Cevert into the man he believed could take his place at the very top. By 1973, that vision seemed complete. In the Tyrrell 006, Jackie clinched his 3rd Drivers' Championship with 2 races to spare, setting a record of 27 Grand Prix wins in 99 starts, the most in history at that point. With that came a quiet decision to retire at season's end, confident the team and his legacy would be in safe hands. Watkins Glen was meant to be the handover. As Francois prepared for qualifying, he turned to Helen Stewart, gave her a playful wink, pulled down his visor, and climbed into the car. Jackie watched him go, not as a rival, but as the man he had chosen to carry the torch. He was pushing, dropping to 3rd with Cevert, dropping to 3rd with Stewart, and everyone else had used the 4. But as he approached turn 3, it was a horrific sight. Francois' car hit the curb, bounced, and when it hit the barrier during the second impact, his car tore in half, along with Cevert. Jody Scheckter and Mike Halewood were the first to arrive at the scene. Jackie came moments later, but they held him back. They couldn't let him see what had happened to his teammate, to his brother. This was Jackie Stewart's 100th Grand Prix, a symbolic moment where he would pass the torch and ride off into the sunset. Stewart returned to the car one last time, drove around the track just to prove to the mechanics that it wasn't their fault. And then he parked his car and walked away from the sport forever. Jackie had seen enough.
I think the major reason is that I've retired for my family, for the children and for Helen. I think it is my responsibility to retire for their sake, for their future.
Jackie's legendary career had been marred by too much tragedy and deaths, but none compared to the loss he had just suffered. It was Jackie's breaking point. He took all of this pain and he turned it into something that would live on forever. Safety in Formula 1 didn't shift overnight. It crept in through the persistence of voices like Jackie Stewart's. He argued that a circuit was only as strong as its weakest corner, that barriers should be more than decoration.
Eventually, the sport's governing body agreed to install crash barriers at the 1969 Spanish Grand Prix. Soon after, they appeared on all major race circuits.
His vision reached beyond the asphalt. Medical crews, he believed, had to be trained like professionals on the front line, with evacuation routes and emergency plans that left nothing to chance. The helmet became a shield, the doctor a fixture at the trackside, the ambulance and helicopter part of the racing landscape. Under the guidance of Professor Sid Watkins,
we never had a Sid Watkins before.
Exactly.
So without Sid Watkins, we wouldn't have you here today. And that Formula One presented itself very well over the years. Considering what we are today, it is absolutely fantastic.
these measures began to take root. And as the years went on, even the cars themselves began to change. Bodies reinforced, fuel systems secured. He was met with resistance every step of the way, but through all the countless lives saved due to the changes, he was cemented as a hero.
I'm forever proud that I was able, against incredible odds, to close down some of the biggest racetracks in the world because they wouldn't put their house in order.
Jackie Stewart became a beloved part of the F1 media, responsible for some of the most iconic and influential analysis and commentary. And to this day, he's one of the most influential parts. He's still one of the most beloved Formula One drivers of all time, consistently being part of events. But his legacy, both for what he achieved on the track and what he was able to change off it, lives to this day. He wasn't just the biggest star of his era, but he was a man who suffered more pain than anyone should have. But in that, he changed Formula One and saved the lives of so many more through his actions.